Prepare for more trouble than you've ever seen.
And make it double. We're on the big screen.
I'll have to catch this on video.
Life can be a challenge. Life can seem impossible.
Pokémon the Movie 2000. Or, as it is also titled in the film, Pokémon the Power of One. Or, if you wish to be more authentic, you could always call it by its Japanese title, Lugia's Explosive Birth! Well, being unhinged is one way of getting people's attention.
Oh, what a mess.
But if you've been following me for a long time, then you may recall that I've been a Pokemon fan my whole life. I grew up watching the anime and collect the cards, but nowadays, I'm all about the main games. However, there are times when I've dedicated a few videos to the franchise. Not only did I look into the Detective Pikachu film when it came out in 2019, but the year prior, I created a review of Pokémon the first movie. And honestly, even for a Pokemon fan like myself, it was not great. There were a few things going for it, like the animation is solid, and Mewtwo is an awesome character by being Shadow the Hedgehog before Shadow the Hedgehog, but as a movie, it doesn't offer much else. If anything, it gave me one of the rare opportunities to write a parody song.
Who am I? Can I encase myself in slavery? Pretend I do not see my agony. This Pokemon that bears my face, I'll battle him to take his place.
Who am I?
But then there's Pokémon the Movie 2000, a film that I'll admit that I haven't seen in decades. And yet, I remember back in my childhood that I enjoyed this one more than the first movie. It wasn't my favorite at the time, since I'd give that title to the third and the one with Lucario, but I certainly put that VHS to good use. And now, many years later, it's time that I reunite with Ash's epic adventure involving Lugia and inspect if I'll have those same feelings that I did as a kid. Will this have the power to be one good Pokemon movie? Or will this blow up on my face like its birth? Let's find out. The story. Pokemon fans may be familiar with the Hoenn story, where Groudon and Kyogre have this earth-shattering beef with each other and using their elements to fight, but then Rayquaza comes in and tells them to shut up so that the world wouldn't be harmed by their commotion. Why do I bring this up? Because the Legendaries of 2000 have a similar narrative, as the three legendary birds, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, want to destroy one another, which would cause the destruction of the whole planet. The only thing that could stop them, according to legend, is to have the beast of the sea, known as Lugia, to help calm the birds down.
Though the water's great guardian shall arise to quell the fighting, alone its song will fail, thus the earth shall turn to ash.
As for the roles of the humans in this, Ash gets to be a part of the traditional festival of Shamudi by retrieving the 3 treasures of the neighboring islands and bring them to the shrine. But with a collector going out of his way to get the legendary birds and Lugia, Ash's role becomes more important than ever. One thing I like to start with is that the movie has a pretty good opening. It sets the tone of the adventure, the exposition is clear and doesn't feel forced about the birds and their purpose, and what the villain is up to. It's like a welcoming invitation to the experience we're about to get into, even for newcomers so that they can also understand what will be going on in the film.
Bring together all 3, their treasures combined tame, the beast of the sea, Lugia.
But when it's time for Ash and his friends to come in and do their part, that's when the story dives into the sea of cliches. Okay, it doesn't immediately become that, as the setup for the world building, like the traditions of Shamudi Island, is still interesting, but gradually, it gets to the point where the movie literally says that the world is about to be destroyed, but according to the prophecy, it could be saved by the Chosen One.
There's only one hope. Only the Chosen One can bring together the treasures to help the water's great guardian.
It's as if, over time, the movie becomes unapologetic to have these tropes to build its plot. Not because it's dependent on them, but because they are proud to use them and frame them as the pieces needed to present Ash's next epic adventure. And yet, it mostly lacks the self-awareness of how overused these elements are, giving out this prominently campy tone that could either make or break one's experience with the film.
I'd hate to get burned by their fire.
I'd hate to get zapped by their lightning.
I'd hate to get hit by their droppings.
At this point, this sounds like 2000 shares the same mistakes as the first movie, right? Well, surprisingly, no. Sure, the story itself is undeniably weak, but the storytelling is what salvaged it from being a lost cause. While it may not realize that the story is such garbage that it might as well be a poison type, the one bit of self-awareness that it does have is that it knows not to make it the priority, and instead, the film sets its main focus on the journey itself. It's how Ash tries to save the world and keep dodging the wrath of the legendary birds that makes the experience engaging, supplying a large amount of well-made action scenes, along with emphasizing the scale and the intensity of the moments to present what he has to do in order to help Lugia, no matter what may face him. This is a case where the storytelling outweighs the story itself in order to give substance to the experience. Yes, it can be laughable with how it proudly displays that it's a chosen one saving the world narrative, but it's what Ash has to go through and seeing the journey unfold that shows how the movie may be stronger than it seems. 2000 was given a bad story, but it definitely made the most out of it. The animation. If there is one element of this film that is the most compared to its predecessor, it's the animation, where it is presented as an upgrade to the show's quality at the time, although only slightly. It's mainly during the more exciting scenes and the times that focus on the parts that are exclusive to this feature where the visuals get a boost to show how it is more than an extended episode of the series. However, that doesn't mean that the boost applies to everything. There are moments when the film has to refuel itself to go all out again and have the animation be placed back to how it usually is in the show. The same character designs are expected, but then the movements are back to being limited again, and the backgrounds don't offer much to look at either. I'll even say that this is not the kind of movie where the environment immerses the viewer in its own world. For the most part, they're simply painted backgrounds of islands that only have a small landmark on each. At the most, Shamudi and its surrounding islands are not among the most interesting places that Ash traveled to. However, there is one piece of background that is the exception. The Collector's Flying Fortress is the only prominent use of computer animation in this feature, presenting the high levels of technology and the massive size needed to pursue his mission to claim the legendary Pokémon on his own. There can be a few times when the CG doesn't blend well with its 2D surroundings, but for the most part, for early computer graphics made in the late 1990s, it's impressive to see the industrialist structure of the whole thing and how the CG emphasizes how advanced the tech within is.
Moltres, Zapdos, and Articuno. Any one of them would be a priceless addition to my collection.
But of course, the main selling point of these movies is to see some great Pokémon battles on an epic scale. I understand if it could be a debate rather if the first or 2000 had the better fight scenes, since the first movie did have more variety in terms of Pokémon who fight each other, even if it lectures that all the fighting is wrong.
Pokémon aren't meant to fight. Not like this. It's useless. What can come out of it?
Well, that didn't stop the franchise from profiting off of it, did it? But in 2000, even though just about all the battles are between Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, and Lugia, while the rest migrate their way to just watch, they are the best parts of the film. On top of the animation itself becoming smoother, it pulls off everything to make the action as effective as they can be. The scale shows how intimidatingly large the fights are between the birds, the intensity is great to show the sheer power that they hold, and the kind of life-threatening danger that Ash puts himself in to complete his mission, and the cinematography is very well done to bring the viewer along for the ride, with all the intricate shots that show the birds in flight, and to see this all from Ash's perspective to capture the feeling of being stuck in the middle of an all-out war between these legendary Pokémon. And to top it all off, I also want to include that the score plays a role in strengthening the action. This will most likely be more effective for Pokémon fans, but the music shares that same tone from both the games and the anime to add to the fast-paced feeling of the scenes. Thanks to the score, the action isn't just a big battle between giants, but they make it clear that we are watching Pokémon battles on a grand scale. I'll even add that the score is great outside of the battles as well. The movie went all out with a whole orchestra to set the theatrical mood of the adventure. In fact, some fans say that one of the most memorable parts of the picture is Lugia's song, which is what you're hearing now alongside my voice. I understand that this is not the most impressive animation that you'll find in a movie. In fact, there are some times when it stays closer to the quality of the show. But when it comes to its primary job of showing epic Pokémon fights and Ash's adventure in the middle of it all, it not only accomplished it, but it was crafted in the way that it's what gets the viewer the most invested in this movie. In terms of Pokémon animation, it's not super effective, but it is a critical hit. The characters. I'll admit that when I started watching this movie, there was one little detail that I completely forgot.
Hey, Ash, think we have time to give the Pokémon a little fresh air?
Oh, right. This guy. Okay, so it's worth noting that 2000 takes place during the anime's arc of the Orange Islands. And during that time, Brock decided to temporarily leave the series to become the assistant of Professor Ivy, which left his role in the series to be filled by this guy named Tracy. And how does he stand out as a character? I honestly have no idea. The most that I can recall about him is that he has a mural before the show went to Johto and that's it. And the movie doesn't do him any favors either because he contributes to absolutely nothing and makes me wish that they brought back Brock.
You talking about me?
But back to the characters, as the story makes it clear that it wants to use those stale tropes, the roles of the cast doesn't offer a lot to make it better. I'll also add that if you decided to watch the English dub, then you're just ordering some extra cheese. They're not bad, of course, but you do get that hammy acting that is expected from 4Kids during that time. And there are moments when the dialogue written for the dub can get weird as well.
Pokémon are more in tune with nature than we are. When something goes wrong, they can sense it. And I'm afraid something somewhere is going terribly wrong.
I'll admit that this line is okay. If it weren't for the fact that they just experienced some crazy weather changes and then a herd of Diglets stole Professor Oak's bike. I don't think you need to be a Pokemon to know that something's not right. Anyways, when it comes to the role of the characters, a lot of them stick to their one trait as their sole contribution to the feature. Like Ash is passionate to fulfill his destiny as the Chosen One, Oak, Ivy, and Ash's mom supply additional exposition when needed, and Team Rocket decided that they want to be good guys now while also being the comic relief supplying bad jokes. However, I will give them credit that there are times when they can be clever and land some good ones.
If it is true, all intelligent life will be destroyed.
That's right.
And I'll be...
You will be fine.
But the one who does stand out well is Misty, who has a fun dynamic with the new character Melody as they argue if the gym leader is Ash's boyfriend or not, which explores Misty's personality to look into what Ash means to her. It's bittersweet to see Misty having her prominent moment in a movie because a few months before this review, the original English voice of Misty and Jessie, Rachel Lillis, passed away due to breast cancer. It's sad that a voice that I've heard for many years during my childhood is gone, But 2000 is a good example of her talent with one of her most iconic characters. Rachel, wherever you are, thank you so much for making part of my childhood fun with your voiceover talent.
You'll have to play Lugia's song. I'll go look for him. And Dash is never really alone because he's got me.
As for the characters exclusive to the movie, there is the already mentioned Melody, who helps Ash to fulfill the prophecy by doing her part with her unique ocarina, and Lawrence III, the movie's villain who wants to capture the legendary birds and Lugia.
I'm afraid I'm not a trainer, young lady. I am merely a collector.
I honestly felt so guilty when I heard this, because this is pretty much what I do when I go shiny hunting in the games. Am I bad for my collecting hobby?
That's disgusting! The way you talk, it's like Pokemon are just things to collect, like dolls or stamps!
But calling him a villain is a bit of a stretch. As much as he seems like an interesting threat as he goes out to get the birds with his fortress, once Zapdos and Moltres breaks out about halfway into the picture, his role becomes almost non-existent as the movie shifts its entire focus onto the birds and Lugia. He's less a villain and more like the idiot who caused the big problem. There is also a talking Slowking who I guess is supposed to be the guardian of the shrine, but I wouldn't have known if I didn't read about it because he doesn't do anything other than making little comments. Although I'll give him credit that he does have possibly the greatest quote that's ever been said by a Pokemon.
I could use pants.
And then there is Lugia, who also has the ability to speak, but as cool as his moves are, his character is nothing more than to be the great peacekeeper, along with having a Mufasa impression to match.
When the treasures of fire, ice, and lightning are aligned, my song shall harmonize with their powers.
Safe to say that this is not the kind of movie that features rich characters. With a few exceptions like Misty, they don't make an impact with who they are, but it's what they do during the action is how they can be interesting. It doesn't bother to develop the characters because if you watch this, then you most likely know who they are. Maybe it's the nostalgia talking, but when watching this after all these years, I actually had fun. Pokémon the Movie 2000 is not a great animated feature, but it is a slight upgrade from the first movie. I'll admit that it does have some real problems as a movie on its own, with a story that is unapologetically cliched with some flat characters, and an English dub that can be very cheesy, and I'm aware that there are some that will be put off by that. However, it is able to still come out as entertaining with some good animation, a great soundtrack, and a lot of engaging action that you come to expect from these movies. I think it's safe to say that this will not convince newcomers to get into the franchise. On the other hand, I believe that Pokemon fans, especially millennials who were there since the beginning of its popularity, will have a good time with this and give them that dose of Pokemon action that they may look for. Also, if I'm going to talk about Pokémon the Movie 2000, then I must bring up the short that appeared before it when the film was out in theaters, Pikachu's Rescue Adventure, which is about Pikachu and the gang going into a valley filled with Pokemon in order to retrieve Togepi. It's pretty much a cute 20-minute cartoon that plays around with their little personalities, do a little dance, and present how they work together during perilous times. It's like if you take one of Disney's Silly Symphony cartoons, but make it all Pokemon themed. If you enjoy watching Pokemon being cute, then you'll have a good time with this short. And if you had a good time with this review, then hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. You could join me in many more animated adventures, whether they be cute like the short or action-packed like the feature. It may not be the kind of explosive movie as its Japanese title suggests, or be able to impress people as a film on its own, but as a Pokemon fan, Lugia's big screen debut is a fun blast from the past. this is Animat, and I want to start things off by giving out a huge thanks to Tom Jackson, whose amazing support on Patreon allowed him to get some amazing rewards, including this one, where he got to ask me to review Pokémon the Movie 2000. And I gotta say, I know I've already mentioned this in the review itself, but I actually did have some fun watching this film, even though I do acknowledge it's not really a great movie, and it does have its own set of problems. And maybe some people could say that maybe some of it is the nostalgia talking. Because yes, I will admit that I do have some fond memories of going to the movie theater and actually watching this movie on the big screen, along with getting that ancient Mew card that they would hand over before you would go and see the movie. So yes, I do have some great memories of that, and remembering as a kid that I did enjoy this film before, but now revisiting it, you know, I still have fun with it, even though it's not really great, or maybe it's debatable if it's even good. But for me personally, I do prefer Pokémon the Movie 2000 over the first movie. And by the way, there is actually a very interesting fact when it comes to Pokémon the Movie 2000, is that this movie is actually the true origins of Lugia. And by that, I mean that Lugia was actually created for this movie before Lugia was even conceived for the games. It wasn't until like much later in the production of Pokemon Gold and Silver that Game Freak decided, you know what, considering that in the movie they're making Lugia this major thing, why don't we go and make Lugia the second legendary Pokemon alongside Ho-Oh? And then that's where it started, kind of like this new tradition of like making exclusive legendaries for Pokemon, like with the different versions, like with Gold and Silver. Now, funny enough, when I was a kid, I remember like I played a lot more Gold than I did Silver, but that's besides the point. However, considering that this is the origins of Lugia, the fact that it started out with Pokemon the Movie 2000, it also sparked this massive debate that to this day, Pokemon fans and the entire Pokemon community are still debating in regards to Lugia's true type. Like, what should Lugia's real type should be? Because in the games, Lugia is considered to be psychic and flying, even though in the movie they emphasize that Lugia is the beast of the sea. But funny enough, later on, like after the movie, Pokemon decided that they just want to go and really emphasize the flying aspect of Lugia, even though, like, you know, it looks like this giant bird. So let's make it all about the fact that it's a flying type, even giving the signature move Aeroblast, which is a flying type. And then later in 2018, they made another Pokemon movie, and that one emphasized a lot more on the fact that Lugia is all about the wind and stuff like that. Like, again, emphasizing more the flying type. So I just figured it would be interesting to also bring that up and bring up the discussion of Lugia in general, if we are talking about Pokemon the Movie 2000. But then again, maybe this is just me trying to show off my nerdiness in terms of the subject of Pokemon, which, let's be honest, it's very rare that I get to do so in a video. Alright, anyway, so now that we are done with that, it is now time that we shall go and move on to the animation hat to pick our next review. And before I do so, I just want to go and say that if you would like to be like Tom Jackson and you want to go and get some amazing rewards, including but not limited to seeing my videos before anyone else, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animat. At the same time, though, if you would like to suggest an animated film you would like me to review and that I would put onto the animation hat, then all you have to do is write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. Alright, so let's see what we got here. What is going to be our next movie? So just want to make sure I get to pick. I don't know. Okay, there we go. I got one. Okay. It got a little bit more difficult just like to have one land on my hand. But anyways, our next review shall be... What the... Oh! Well, okay, this is kind of good news because I already did review this one. I actually picked Dougal, and I do believe I've already done a review. I've already talked about that one, so I don't have to go and do that. All right, anyways, let's go and actually pick another one. So there we go. So hopefully this one will be a little bit more different. It's one that I haven't talked about. So now the actual next review shall be... oh! Yes! Oh my god! Have I talked about this? Oh my god, I don't think I've actually done a review of this movie because you know what? I've talked a lot about this film in particular. Like, I've talked about the history of it. I've reviewed the sequel when that came out, and that thing was absolutely garbage. But now I can actually go and discuss about the movie itself. Oh, this is definitely going to be a fun one. This is definitely one of those cases that looks can be absolutely deceiving. And I would actually consider this film to be the best movie with the worst animation.
How it all began, and how I'll begin again.